Letsogile is the Chief Innovation Officer and a co-founder for Kometsi Telecom, that is Kometsi Telco and Hyperconverged Solutions. Letsogile will actually be talking about an interesting topic, that is ICT infrastructure providers supporting IoT deployments, right? Letsogile, I can't wait to hear what Letsogile has to present. So may I please request you to take the virtual stage? I'm pretty sure we have you here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you please, I think we can see you as well, can we? Yes, we can.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thanks a lot for inviting me here. It's actually interesting to come to these insightful places, because like when the past guys, these guys were just presenting their topic, you get other things coming which deals directly with what you want to say, and but not to get into other things. I'll be talking about digitalization, digital infrastructure, because that is a topic that's very, very close. That's very, very close to my heart, and it's what we do at Kometsi Telecommunications. Also, there's a quote from Huawei, and a study done by Huawei and Arthur Digital. It says, today, most countries strive to achieve strong digital economies, yet there is no standard model to follow. And I really like this statement, because that is where we find ourselves with the technology. A lot of things have been happening over time, and now our definitions are so broad because they have to go so far back to capture what has been happening. At the same time, they have to be forward-looking and capture what is happening on the ground. So when we talk about digital, I chose digital infrastructure. There are three topics. There were in the panel. There were three topics: digital infrastructure, IoT, and edge. So I took a point where I can bring them all together and bundle them, because the IoT platforms and the edge platforms, they are all infrastructure. And then when we come from such a very, very broad background, that's when we get to really, really see the picture of what is happening and what we can do and what we want to say. So my definition sometimes will be amorphous because of that very, very broad spectrum of and things that have been happening in the field for a very, very long time. So usually I start with questions like, and I was trying to highlight the difficulty with digital transformations, like what are they, and where are we going with them? What are we saying about them? So that difficulty arises from one, we do not have a clear standard model where we're saying, okay, these are digital platforms. And then also coming from IoT is a very, very old technology that has been coming with the ages, and we have to also look at that. And with those definitions not properly done, we get trapped in words. So that is the first difficulty that we have in the telco and computing space. And then getting now really to the presentation is, what do we see? What do we currently see in the telecommunications space? And where I stand, we operate in Botswana and in South Africa as a startup in the telco space. And in the past 8 years, we've seen companies, big and small, go for what is commonly referred to as a low-hanging fruit in the telecom and technology. And we know that it makes sense from an economic point of view. But then the question is, when you look at the technology cap, where the technology is actually going, the technological trajectory, does it actually, should we, especially in Africa, be taking what may seem like short-term solutions to long-term problems? And where we stand, we believe that that shouldn't be the case. We should be trying to look as far ahead as we can to be able to match the first world countries, because I believe we have an edge, and the pun is intended. I believe that we have an edge in that we can leverage pre-existing solutions to get ahead. And that is where we should be doing. We should be checking the ground that we're standing on and then looking forward to where we are going in terms of, insofar as the infrastructure is concerned. So for us, the fundamental question is, will we be able to adequately support the demand for customers going into the future? And what will be required of us? If we can answer this properly, or we can articulate these problems properly, then we can make intelligent predictions into the future. And then bringing new solutions wouldn't be as hard or as painful as it is, we believe it is right now. So the question again is, what do we see? Currently, what we see is massive data. And this massive data is the economy itself. It is not just a driver of the economy, it is the economy itself. We are actually deriving economic benefit from the data. And that is the picture that is staring us every day when we look at our workspaces. Now, where is all this data coming from? And for this, I'm actually building a case for the edge as a solution to as part of the solution to a bigger problem. So where does the data come from, and what do we need to do with this data? The modern economy has massive data generating points. But at this stage, for this presentation, we look at the data that is generated by IoT devices. We're choosing IoT devices because IoT enables companies to automate processes, to reduce labor costs. It also helps in cutting down waste. It improves service delivery and make it less expensive to manufacture and deliver goods, which is what really businesses are looking for. So IoT now becomes a very, very central part of our existence and our existence as an economy and for us as a social phenomena. Like, for us to be socially functional, we need IoT. It is no longer relegated to managing some large pipes somewhere where people cannot see those pipes anyways. It is an everyday occurrence that we have to deal with. And then when we deal with IoT, it starts giving us this massive data. Well, why am I saying that there is massive data? The International Data Corporation prediction is that by 2025, there will be 40 billion connected IoT devices, and that this will generate 80 zettabytes of data. On the other hand, Cisco predicts that there will be 75 billion connected IoT devices by 2025, and this will generate 500 zettabytes of data. It doesn't matter who's making the prediction. The bottom line is we are looking at huge, huge numbers, both in the devices themselves and even worse on the data that they're actually producing. So what does it mean to us? What does it mean to the end users? What does it mean to us as telco solution providers? What are we going to do to deal with this massive data? And how are we going to do what we want to do with this data? The first question is a question that speaks to infrastructure. And the second question speaks about the operational models we are going to use, which is actually computing. And this is why I've actually brought IoT and edge together. I am going to walk a very, very thin line. I'm going to leave 5G outside this conversation. And I know that that might make this presentation, it might take the depth out of this presentation. But I want to go that line because the moment I believe that when I go into 5G, the complexity of the presentation actually increases. And I'm not too sure how much time I have and if we can actually delve into that. But I believe that I can adequately treat the problems that arise from the IoT devices from an infrastructure point of view, and that arise from the edge computing, also from a computational models, and also from an infrastructure point of view, without going into 5G. So if if there are questions that will arise around 5G, we will touch on them, but I really wanted to zero in on IoT devices and on edge computing. With so much data being generated, to answer the second question and the list of questions I asked, at Kometsi Telecommunication, we believe we talk about something that we call a collapsible IT infrastructure. And for us, a collapsible IT infrastructure is an infrastructure that is rapidly deployable. It has low latency, it is secure, it is API driven, and it is distributed at the nodes. It is distributed at the nodes where the data is actually happening. We talk more about something that we call the ZES. ZAZE is where every point is a connection, and that connection is also a compute node, which is the situation that we are actually facing when it comes to IoT devices. Each IoT device also is a computational point, which means that it raises complexities of its own, and then it takes those and pushes them downstream, where another node has to deal with that. So we have this to and fro information going through, and this is not just dumb pipes that we are passing information through. These pipes are also computing, and they're actually intelligent nodes where this data is passing through, and the level of complexity actually increases. The computing power really shoots through the roof. So we believe that to be able to make sense of this massive data that is being generated by IoT devices, we need what we call a collapsible IT infrastructure. And what we mean by a collapsible IT infrastructure, an infrastructure that is rapidly deployable, it is low latency, it is secure, and it is driven at the edges. In this presentation, I've also not talked much about the complexity that arises from the security, where the attack surface has actually been increased. Another reason for that was, in the interest of time, I was trying to narrow in on a very small topic that is manageable, but we can actually open those other conversations later on in the presentation. So the edge is a prerequisite for digital transformation. With so much and the sensitivity requirements of IoT, with so much data and the sensitivity requirements of IoT devices, we need distributed nodes closer to the source, that is at the edge. That is, data, compute, storage, and application services are brought to the end user. It is difficult to talk about the edge paradigm without talking about 5G, as the two are evil twins, but I intend to walk a thin line and talk only about the edge and its requirements without talking about 5G. This may take depth out of this conversation, but I believe the need to narrow the scope is important here, like I've said. Okay. First and foremost, the edge solves the issues of latency and quality of service, not only for 5G networks, but even for existing current infrastructure. And that is why I believe that I could go into this without necessarily going into 5G. That is, the edge is more than just an infrastructural conceptualization and design, but it is also the brick mortar and the plumbings for densely distributed data collection points, which is what we get from IoT deployments. A form follows function. If we look closely at what is happening with the edge and IoT, it is like a form follows function principle. That is, we have densely distributed data collection points over the space, and then they have to be encapsulated somehow or contained, if we may use that in commerce. And then to contain them at those points, we deploy the edge at those points. So the edge becomes more like a natural progression based on the problem itself that we are facing. That the edge becomes a logical solution to an existing problem. I should highlight that usually, maybe it is my own interpretation of the conversations I've been hearing about the edge, but conversations about the edge are sometimes they insinuate that the edge will replace centralized computing. And I believe that shouldn't be the message that we are sending across, because they are not. The edge is part of an ecosystem of which central computing plays a very, very central role in. And the reason centralized computing plays a central role within these modern models of computing is that when you look at the model for digitization, it is a three-tiered model. It's a nested model. And inside that nesting, we have information services, we have telecommunications, we have hardware manufacturers, we have software and IT computing, which is actually the core of the digitalization. And then going outside that ring, we have digital services like digital economy, which the presentation for digital economy has just been done. And then from there, we have the third tier to the digital economy platform, which is the algorithmic platform, the Industry 4.0, e-businesses, precision agriculture, and the likes. So for the gig economy to really be functional, it needs a very, very strong telecommunications infrastructure. It needs a very, very strong software and IT computing infrastructure. And where we are in this presentation, I was trying to highlight the importance of those two, and that with those, we will be able to actually enable other digital economic activities like the digital services, like algorithmic economy, like e-businesses, like precision agriculture. So we went that far back. We need to go that far back, get it very, very, very right at that level, so that we can have solutions, better solutions upstream, where we're looking at things like precision agriculture, e-health, e-commerces, and et cetera, et cetera, and et cetera. So with that in mind, we have to look at the opportunities that exist and the challenges that we are currently facing. We know that telcos took ages optimizing for voice and other services, but the API-driven world with decoupled functions was not really hard-baked into their operating models. It is a new phenomenon to them. It is as new to them as it is new to everyone else. This gives an entry point for smaller players in the telco spaces, where we can actually have niche players playing in certain parts of this huge and massive digital economy. And this can also be enabled by solutions like the edge computing, because if you have a small company that is doing edge computing, you may find that they don't need as many customers as, say, MTN in South Africa, or Vodacom, or Mascom in Botswana, or B-Mobile, for them to break even, or for them to actually be profitable. So the gig economy provides these nooks and crannies where smaller players can actually play. And I strongly believe that tier one telco operators should create an enabling environment and allow smaller players to play within these nooks and crannies that arise from the modern telecommunications economy, from the modern telecommunications space and the digital economy, so that we can have a robust ecosystem that serves the on-demand customer without giving them any headaches. It is interesting. It was actually interesting. it was interesting for me to learn that Somalia leads in e-commerce. I believe that rightly, maybe South Africa, Egypt, Morocco should be the leading providers. And I'm not really sure. It's something that I really want to I will have to look at it later. But if you look at the telco models, I believe that the countries that are expected to be leading when it comes to e-money are companies with very, very strong telco players who make this big money, and we have these amazing services like MTN, Mascom, and Botswana. But it's still actually that piece of information kind of threw me off balance. But coming back to my presentation, without going into tying myself into knots, tier one telcos, especially in Botswana and South Africa, are not known to want to collaborate with smaller players. They are very, very much closed ecosystems. And I believe that if they could be more open, then we will have more opportunities that are rising, because we can have smaller players sitting at the edge, setting solutions as and when they are needed, which brings us to the idea of a collapsible IT infrastructure. That is, you set a particular solution as and when it is needed to serve the particular needs of that customer and of your customer. And when your customer is satisfied and your job is done, you wrap up your services, you move on to the next customer, you provide them with a service, because we're using software here, we're using code. You can refactor the code, you can rewrite the code, there's so many things that you can actually do with the code. The original code can be redone in so many ways to address diverse problems across the diversity inside the telecommunication space, and to address the different problems that our customers really need. But we need, in most cases, we need tier one operators and tier two operators to be coming on board, to be more recipient, to be seen, to be an aggregation point actually of the smaller edge solutions that are laid out all over the space. So thanks a lot. With that, I believe that this is really what I wanted to say. And if there are questions, I'll be taking some.
Thank you so much, Letsogile. Well, actually, we do have questions, but I will email it over to you in the essence of time, right? And you can respond to the email as per your convenience, yeah?